I think the most important thing when you're finding a therapist for you is to find somebody that you feel comfortable talking to. Like, absolutely, fundamentally, and the research supports that the change process is mostly pushed forward by the relationship that you have with the person that you're talking to. We are social animals and we heal by being witnessed. And if you don't feel like you're being witnessed by the person that you're talking to, then it's not going to work, even if they have the most cutting edge techniques.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Kristen Donnelly of the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. And Abbey Research is a huge believer that curiosity can change the world because it's the only thing that ever has. Because we change our minds and expand our worldviews and understand the planet better through stories and relationships. And those always start with curiosity. In service of that, we started this series. It's called Welcome to My World. And I get a chance to talk to people all over the place who are different than me, which is literally everybody, about something in their lives that if we knew about it, our human experience would be richer. Because let's face it, none of us know how to human. We're all figuring it out together. So let's keep learning about each other the best we can. And my guest today is absolutely no exception to that. I am so excited to introduce you all to Becca Newkirk. Becca is a licensed therapist specializing in complex trauma in the DC area, which is certainly a city that has a lot of that. So I'm sure she's incredibly busy. She is a certified clinic coach helping high achievers go from type A to type BE. I don't know what that is either, so we're going to ask her. And they can still have fun and get shit done. Important. Has 2 small children who keep her on her toes, and she is passionate about supporting people and get what they truly want out of life. Amazing. I can't wait to have this conversation. Becca, thank you so much for joining me.
Yay. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, let's dive right in because I've never heard of this type BE and I'm probably a type A. So can you unpack this for us?
Absolutely. Yes. So type BE for me is, I made it up, first of all,
Love
and it's
it.
about being able to like exist in your own skin. It's like a play on this idea of like, be a human being, not a human doing, right? And so many people are so focused on what they are projecting and how they're showing up for everybody else in their lives. They're focused on, what am I doing here, instead of being able to just exist and soak it in. Like, it's short. We got to be here when we're here.
I don't disagree even a little bit. Yeah, I think it's that, and it's such a learning process. I'm sure you've seen with your clients.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you think you've achieved it and you're like, okay, good. I'm good. I can focus on being, I'm doing good. And then like 3 days later, you're back into old habits. Like, it's such a process. What got you into this work?
Well, so I've been going to therapy personally since I was very small. And I think my parents started going to couples counseling. It started really helping. When I was little, my parents fought a lot. My dad was what I call like a rager, right? So he used to, he was never violent, but he was very loud and he had, difficulty with his anger and communication. And the communication in our family was very sort of shut down. And they realized that, thank goodness. And I'm so grateful that they did. So they started going to therapy. Their communication really did shift. And they realized, I think, in that process that I was a very sort of quiet, withdrawn, shy, anxious child. And so then they put me in therapy. And I've been going on and off, but mostly on ever since. And at this point, as a therapist, I feel like it is my responsibility to be engaging in the process that I'm asking my clients to engage in with me. And so I don't ever want to forget what it feels like to be sitting on the other side of that conversation and to be like vulnerable and sort of like just split open in front of somebody else. And so I do that regularly still. And it was when I was in high school that I started realizing, I'd really love to be able to provide this type of change to other people.
I love that. So I have a master's in social work, and I have a lot of friends that have gone and gotten their clinicals, therapy license and everything else. And that's not my bag. I'm much more macro, but I love the idea that you're so dedicated to making sure you know what it feels like. And I think that's a missing thing for a lot of therapists. And like, you can tell, they haven't really done it in a minute. So there's a lot of people I know right now, I'm looking at the statistics. I think it's therapists and divorce attorneys had the biggest spike in the last 18 months.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
So folks who are maybe thinking like, oh, I should talk to a therapist, but they have no idea where to start or even like how to interview a therapist, I guess. What advice would you give somebody doing it for the first time?
Oh man, I think the most important thing when you're finding a therapist for you is to find somebody that you feel comfortable talking to. Like absolutely fundamentally and the research supports that the change process is mostly pushed forward by the relationship that you have with the person that you're talking to. We are social animals and we heal by being witnessed. And if you don't feel like you're being witnessed by the person that you're talking to, then it's not going to work, even if they have the most cutting edge techniques like available today. So I think my thing is find somebody that you feel comfortable talking to, make sure that you're doing like the consult call where you get to ask questions. How do you work? What does a session look like? How do you view the types of pain points that I'm describing? Like those are the questions that feel really important to me.
I like that. And like, yeah, so I've been in and out of therapy for a long time too. And I went back again a couple of years ago. And I remember the first time I walked in, I was auditioning therapists and she didn't make eye contact with me and just kept like scribbling in her notebook and then proceeded to tell me that the root of my problems was X. And I was like, I've been talking to you for 27 minutes and you haven't looked at me once. I was like, cool. That was fun.
Yeah, not great.
Super rad. And it's frustrating that like, I mean, she could have been having a super off day and that's not what she's like at all, but I couldn't take the risk again. Like I couldn't risk my time or my heart. Like that's just, it's a very vulnerable relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hear so often, honestly, like lots of people right now, I feel like are like dipping their toe back into the dating game. Because
of course,
the world is open, right? And they're able to like talk to people now. So I've been having a lot of conversations with people about like, if you don't have chemistry, like if you don't have feelings for a person, like that's it. The je ne sais quoi is like not there. And you don't have to give people like, well, I'll try one more. Well, I'll try like, that maybe that was like a weird date for them, right? It's like, no, you should probably have feelings for the person, or at least at the very least be interested in getting to know more about them. And I feel really similarly sort of with therapy, right? Like it's not necessarily that you need to know more about me, but more so that like, okay, this feels good. Like I want to tell you more about my life. I want to tell you more about my hardships. Like it feels good when I'm talking to you.
Yeah, when I met my husband, very famously in our circle of friends, we went to lunch and he talked for 42 minutes straight because he claims he was very nervous. He was very adorable. And I only had an hour lunch break. So at the end of it, he wanted to see us, like to see me again. And my first thought wasn't like, oh, hell no. My first thought was like, okay, well, I mean, he's kind of cute. And like, like I'll give him another run. And that is why I gave him another chance. Like there were other first dates I went on where I was like, and somebody would be like, oh, but like, he could have just been really nervous. And I was like, I don't care. Like, I don't care. I'm not trying to be polite to somebody that I might be spending the rest of my life with.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. And like, I think that's how I sort of landed on this. I think for many therapists, and I am certainly no exception to this, I think we end up are like the clients that we work the best with sort of are very similar to us in some ways. Like the pain points are similar. We've gone through it, right? And so I find myself working quite a bit with the type of complex trauma that comes from feeling invisible when you're little. So emotional neglect, invisibility, like just feeling like you're in a lot of pain, but you have to like show up for the people around you. So almost being like parentified, feeling undue levels of responsibility. And that morphs into a type of perfectionism and anxiety that shows up as I have to be everything to everyone all the time. And this is how I get my worth, and this is how I get my value. Yeah.
Okay. I have like 12 or 15 names running through my head right now. But the first thing I want to attack is you use the phrase complex trauma. Mm-hmm. Can you unpack that for us?
Absolutely. So most of the time when we talk about trauma, I think what comes to mind is sort of like discrete or single incident trauma. So like I got in a car crash, or like I got beaten up or assaulted or something like that. So obviously incredibly horrific and difficult to move through and all of that stuff. Complex trauma is different in that it shows up in small moments over and over and over again over the course of years. So a lot of the time when we're talking about complex trauma, I sometimes call it like relational trauma. Okay. So it's the trauma of having been betrayed in relationship over and over, or having been like neglected by caregivers,
okay,
either physically or emotionally. And part of what is, I think, tricky about complex trauma is that it has the same symptoms, right? So we've got like the avoidance and the hypervigilance and the re-experiencing, which is pretty clear when you're talking about single incident trauma. It's like, I felt like I was back in the car. I saw the semi coming at me, or whatever that looks like. When we're talking about complex trauma, the re-experiencing or flashbacks are a lot more insidious.
I was about to say, that feels like it could happen from anybody at any time in any relationship.
Yes. And so, so it ends up feeling like you just feel the way that you felt at the time when it was happening. So a lot of people will say things like, in so many circumstances, I'm like competent and capable and intelligent, and I know I can do things and I have some confidence. But then a thing happens, right? And it's like I lose access to all of those skills that I've built up and all of that strength that I've built up. My response to that is, you didn't lose it. It's not that, the trauma script sort of like going through people's heads in those moments is often like, this is who I really am. Like, this is true. And any moment that I felt differently from this, I was just fooling myself, and it was just easy, and it was luck.
So it's almost like this also feeds imposter syndrome, where...
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, where like, because you have bifurcated yourself, your trauma has bifurcated yourself. Mm-hmm. You can't access the full range of your greatness because you're 4 years old again.
Yes. And how can we expect a 4-year-old to be doing all of your like adult people things that you're supposed to be doing?
Yeah, I have a friend who's had incredibly complex trauma. And I remember at one point, one of her therapists told her, like, when she got that feeling, like when she, because her response was to get incredibly defensive to accidental re-triggerings and lash out at a lot of us.
Yeah.
And it was like our common thing was like, none of us are mind readers. Like, we don't know how to help you navigate this because we don't know what we did. We don't know anything. And so one of her therapists was like very validating, like, hey, you're trying to protect your 4-year-old self, and that's really beautiful. But like, what we have to get you to the place is to realize that none of your friends are trying to hurt your 4-year-old self. And so like, how do we unwrite that narrative? And I'd never thought about trauma in a way before, where it was like rewriting a completely new narrative about who you were and who you are now.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think a big part of the work is like identifying all of these parts. Like, so I really like this modality for therapy called internal family systems. And basically the idea about it is that, it's that bifurcation that you're talking about, except just it has more arms. Okay. So it has more compartments. And it's that each of these parts of ourselves, even the ones that cause us to do things that are like really antithetical to the person that we see ourselves as or want to be, right? The part that lashes out. And actually many perfectionists have that, right? It's that we're passive, and then like super fucking aggressive, and then passive again, because we feel ashamed. So it's identifying like, okay, these parts have like roles that they started doing for a reason. So like they're trying to help you, trying to protect you, even if it's an addictive part, even if it's like an aggressive part, even if it's like my dad's rager or whatever, right? Like it's trying to do something. So how do we support that part of you in doing it differently.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's important to remember too, as you're saying this, is what just came to me is like, at every moment we're doing the best we can. Like, even if we're acting out of incredible trauma and that's the primary response, we're still doing the best that we can. And a huge part of healing, at least in my life, I have some complex trauma, and now that you've described it as well, has been to create my capacity to do like the best that I can. Like, it's created a wider range of emotions that I can choose from when I hit those buttons.
Yep.
And being taught to use my words instead of my trauma reaction.
Yeah. It reminds me, I love this quote by Carl Rogers. The curious paradox is that only when we accept ourselves as we are, then can we change. Right.
Yeah.
I love it. And that's the only quote that I don't butcher every time I try to say. All of the other ones, I like get them all twisted.
I get
it. It's, and it's become so much more like profound for me in having my own children and recognizing like, this is what 2 years old looks like. Like, this is what 3 years old looks like. And how would I interact with them? Like what would I want to do for my tiny people? And then why am I not able to translate that internally? And so I use a lot of those metaphors, in my therapy for myself, like, with my clients, with my friends, whatever. And I feel like it's so powerful because a lot of us have instinctive kind of mechanisms for like, she's 3, she didn't know, right? Like, she's just being 3. And when a 3-year-old is being 3, how do you support them in moving through those big feelings? Why can't we do that for us?
It's such a great question. And I think, I mean, the answer is that we have a really jaded idea of actually what adulthood is. I think, like, we have decided as a society that adulthood means you are like a buttoned up 1950s ad man who has all their shit together. Yeah. And all we've done is fall into propaganda. Like, the world, like, humans have never behaved like that. Mm-hmm. Humans have never had it all together.
Yeah.
I mean, like, Coca-Cola just told us that we did. And we've all fallen into this myth, essentially, of what adulthood is. And so if we could understand that adulthood is just like, we have more resources to tap when we fall apart.
Yeah.
Is really all it comes down to. But yeah, like, my niece is 18 months and the absolute, as we record this, the best thing on the planet, obviously. And when she's being 18 months, none of us are going to hold her accountable for that action. We understand almost as, I don't know, I just think about, like, we understand as a society that consent can't be given until someone's 17. Mm-hmm. Accountability for actions the youngest we've ever held somebody accountable for actions is 9 legally. That's the youngest it's ever gone. But we expect that from ourselves all the time. Right. In ways that we don't know how to human.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And it's just reminding me, like, I think so many people a lot of people with this type of complex trauma end up becoming sort of workaholics and like feeling like they get stuck in the nitty gritty of, like, they're just always consumed by it. And I remember when I was little, my dad very, very much was like, adulting was hard for him. Life has been hard for him. He has like his own, whatever, it's passed down. But I remember looking at him and saying, like, I don't like want to grow up because it's scary, like, to look at what he is dealing with and everything that he's carrying. Like, I don't ever feel like I'm going to be able to do that. And now, so like, our family has just, I have an almost 1-year-old and a just turned 3-year-old in April. And my mom just died at the end of April. And
so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. It's been hard. But my dad keeps sort of like saying things like, I wasn't there. I wasn't there with her the way that I wanted to be. I wasn't there with you when you were little the way that I wanted to be. I didn't show up. And he feels now, and we're still in the early part of the grief, right? But he keeps saying things like, he feels like it's over. Like, I made my mistakes and now I have to, like, I sort of like made my bed, now I have to lie in it, kind of thing. And I have taken on the mantle of being the workaholic in the family. And I love my work. And so it's easy because I do love what I do. But I think part of the impetus for creating this now, like clinic coach thing and like creating the course to support people in becoming type B and just learning how to show up and like have more fun, have more joy, show up for the things that really matter is like, if I hadn't already been starting this process for myself, I might not have been there when she died. And I cannot let that be a possibility in my life, right? My kids are still little. I still have time. My dad still has time too, but I get to make the decisions now.
I think we all have more time than we think we do. And life is written in pencil. And I say that all the time. And and there's a lot, there's a lot on the internet that's written in ink. And, we talk about behaving and people have long memories and everything else. But in terms of our future, it's in pencil. Mm-hmm. And we get to erase what doesn't fit anymore. We get to be new versions. I think the last year of undulating global grief, and then however it intersected in personal lives, sadly, like yourselves, with I hope more of us take the lesson that you've taken, which is it doesn't have to be this way anymore.
Right.
There is no going back to anything anyway. So as we rebuild something new, let's build something new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm so grateful that I was able to be there. I mean, not just for the moment when she died, but also like in the moments leading up to it, right? Like I really did. That's one thing that I can say is that I showed up, and my kids are little and I'm showing up, and I really desperately want to be able to provide that opportunity for other people. And not everybody needs therapy. Like not everybody needs the one-on-one kind of support or to be able to process through things as individuals. And so I just really want to like shout it from the rooftops, right? Like, this is it. Your life is now. Like, let's do it. Show up for it.
I love that so much. And I think that's a beautiful place to hit, to wrap up our conversation here so that those words are what people leave with. I want to briefly apologize for the dive bombing fly. That was kind of all over the place. I smashed myself in the face a few times, folks. I don't know what it is about July in Philadelphia, but we just get giant flies. It's super fun. I want to obviously thank Becca for joining me. Thank you so much. And if you guys enjoyed this conversation, got a lot out of it, saw yourself in it, maybe realize some things, I'd love for you to hit that thumbs up button. The algorithm will then register your positive emotional response. If you like these kind of conversations and would like to learn more about yourself and the world around you, please subscribe to our channel. We have conversations like this all the time that are both very real, vulnerable, and academic, and all these kind of messes all at once. And we'd love for you to join us. This has been Welcome to My World. I am Dr. Kristen Donnelly. My guest today has been Becca Newkirk. All of the ways to get a hold of Becca, including that great course that she was talking about, are all in the show notes. So just scroll on down and click to your heart's content. And I will see you next time on Welcome to My World.